Hi, my name is Eric William Wellstrand, and welcome to Section 3 of Introduction to the Economy of Saudi Arabia and the other GCC countries. This section is about economic diversification and industrialization. This is part 1. As in the previous section, if you haven't seen it before, please have a look at Section 0 for the purpose, outline, and disclaimer of this presentation. Economic diversification and industrialization. Why? There are several reasons for Saudi and the other GCC countries to want to diversify their economy. One is, of course, that oil will run out eventually, or we will find a substitute. They don't want to be 100% dependent on the oil market. If all your export revenue is from the oil market, you become very vulnerable in periods of low oil prices. For instance, oil price crashes like we experienced during the financial crisis, but it did rebound quite early though. I believe there's one more pressing issue for the governments of the region, which is job creation and social stability. Exporting crude oil does not necessarily generate a lot of jobs, especially if you import a lot of expatriates to do most of the work. So, how do you change this? You need to attract investment, external know-how, and you have to reform potentially the education system. You basically have to build a service industry, industrial base, or something like that. Like the local governments, of course, know this. This and the following section is about how they're trying to achieve it. Start off with regulatory developments. Saudi Arabia has taken some large strides toward opening up the country in the last 10 years. SAGIA was started in 2000. It is the Saudi Authority's General Investment Agency. Their objective is to attract foreign investment. And since 2000, they have modified many laws, making it easier to invest, set up industry, in general, made it easier to do business in Saudi Arabia. They, for instance, had a 10 times 10 program, which was a very ambitious program, which wanted to place Saudi Arabia among the 10 top competitive investment destinations by the year 2010. Depending on which benchmark you use, they almost made it, but they sort of didn't. For instance, the World Bank has an ease of doing business report, which could be one of these, or how you measure the 10 best business investment destinations. Currently, Saudi Arabia has the 12th spot, which is impressive. To put it into perspective, a country like Netherlands, with a long commercial tradition, has spot number 31. You have Italy at 87. Saudi Arabia is quite impressive that it has the 12th spot. Personally, I do not believe this is 100% correct. I base that a little bit on my experience here. Yes, they have made enormous progress the last 10 years. But I believe what they have done is they know the indicators or the components of the index, and they have actively gone out and targeted these areas. I believe most people who do business here would agree it's not the 12th easiest country in the world to do business. Remember now that these rankings include smaller countries. The two top spots are Hong Kong and Singapore, which are famous for being, open economies. That means there's only 9 spots between Saudi Arabia and those two, and that is not correct, basically. But again, I'm not trying to be over pessimistic. There has been impressive changes in a very relatively short period of time. The governments here basically run a very active industrial policy. You can be for or against it, depends which economist you ask, but basically this is not a free economy. It is in many ways a sort of planned economy where the government doesn't directly control production, but it does it by controlling different incentives. I will be talking basically about the successes. I'll be talking about what is working or what they have built. I am not going to take the position for or against promoting the policy they have here. But basically, my personal belief, I'm not really usually for a very active industrial policy. In 2009, the Saudi Monetary Agency, in their 2009 annual report, said they wanted to increase the industrial percentage of GDP from 11% to 20% by 2020. In 11 years, that's a short period of time. How do they intend to do this? The main reason you have industrial growth in Saudi Arabia and the other countries is cheap energy and cheap feedstocks plus other government incentives. Large international companies come here and they set up joint ventures with the local companies. I'll give you an example. Norwegian Hydro, which is a huge aluminium producer in Norway, recently opened, or recently, a while ago now though, but relatively recently, opened their biggest plant in Qatalum, in Qatar. Why would they open in Qatar? It's simple. Cheap energy. Aluminium requires a lot of energy, and they have long-term gas contracts securing cheap energy supply. Economy. From an economic perspective, most economists would say this is not the smartest policy. It can often be better to sell the oil in the market than to create a very heavily subsidized industry. Personally, I believe that that's not the question Saudis are asking. They don't care if it is better to sell oil at $100 in the market than to sell it to $10 to local industry and then make maybe $50 on the produce from there, which is 10 plus 50, and the net total is $60, which is less than the 100. That's not the way they're looking at it. I'm not saying that calculation there is accurate. As a very simple example. From what I see, the most important for them is to create the industry, to create jobs, and as I said earlier, social stability. Because the way the way these countries are run right now, the alternative is often to create government-paid jobs. That's where most of the locals actually work. I mentioned in the previous section that refinery and petrochemicals has been a big thing with regards to diversification. I will return to that again in the next session together with mining, which has been called the potential third leg of the economy, the first being oil, the second being petrochemicals. Other areas of interesting growth is, for instance, tourism. This might strike most of us Westerners as a little odd. If you ever try to get a tourist visa to Saudi, you'll understand that's basically not possible. But what most people don't think of, in the Western world, of course, that is that millions of people come every year to perform a Hajj or the Umrah. Saudi Arabia is actually one of the bigger tourist destinations in the world. Currently, they are also doing a lot to develop domestic tourism. Right now, very many Saudis travel abroad, especially during the warm season in the summer, and you see a lot of capital being brought out of the country purely to be spent on tourism. Therefore, it's one of the reasons why they support domestic tourism. The financial industry is not very big, not compared to the large sums of money which has accumulated in the country. The government, of course, has many other tools to promote industry. Transport infrastructure is very important. I'll discuss that again in Sector 6. The industrial economic cities, which is coming up now. We have power generation or cheap energy, which will be Section 5. Natural gas exploration, which we discussed in the previous section.